What would happen when a liberation revolution lasts only a few hours, but leaves behind tens of thousands of corpses, and a silence stretching for more than half a century? Zanzibar, today often described as a tourist paradise, blue seas, white sands, ancient quarters where Arab and African influences intertwine. Yet very few people know that on this very peaceful island, in January 1964, one of the bloodiest ethnic violence episodes in post-colonial Africa took place, a tragedy that official history has almost chosen to forget. To understand what happened, we must turn back time, returning to Zanzibar in the first half of the 20th century. At that time, Zanzibar was a colony of the British Empire. But like many other colonies, the British did not rule directly through a large bureaucratic apparatus. They governed through an intermediary class, and in Zanzibar, that class consisted of Arabs of Omani origin. For many generations, Arabs held land, trade, and key administrative positions. They controlled the clove plantations, the economic lifeblood of the entire island. Below them was the South Asian community, mainly Indians, serving as merchants, accountants, and financial intermediaries. And what about the indigenous Africans, who made up about 90% of the population? They were farmers, dock laborers, workers on plantations that had once belonged to their ancestors. They were numerous, but they had no voice. They lived in their own homeland, yet felt like outsiders within their own society. This injustice did not always erupt into violence. It simmered, accumulated, passed from one generation to the next. Not only poverty, but the feeling of being despised, marginalized, ruled without choice. Then came 1963, a milestone that seemed as if it would change everything. Britain granted independence to Zanzibar. A new flag was raised. A new national anthem was played. On paper, Zanzibar became an independent nation. But in reality, power remained in the hands of parties dominated by the Arab elite. Elections, though legal, were designed through electoral districts that favored the ruling minority. As a result, the African majority continued to lose out. In their eyes, independence was merely a change of flag. Life remained the same. Power still did not belong to them. It was in this atmosphere that radical movements, trade unions, and unemployed youth began to rise. They no longer believed that change could come through the ballot box. And when faith in peaceful politics collapses, violence always becomes a dangerous option. Then a figure appeared, almost out of nowhere, yet became the catalyst for the entire tragedy. His name was John Okello. Okello was not an intellectual, not a politician, not a military officer. He was a manual laborer, of humble origin, with a powerful voice and a fanatical religious belief. Okello claimed that he heard the voice of God, that he had been given a mission to liberate Africans from oppression. In a society full of resentment, such words carried terrifying weight. He told the crowds that the time had come to take back Zanzibar. And many people believed him. In the early hours of January 12, 1964, everything exploded. Thousands of African youths, armed with seized guns, machetes, and clubs, simultaneously attacked police stations, barracks, and government facilities. The uprising unfolded with shocking speed. Within just a few hours, the Zanzibar government collapsed completely. The Sultan fled. Officials scattered. The old order disappeared. But history has shown that the moment power collapses is often when humans are at their most frightening. When there is no longer law. When there is no longer accountability. When hatred suppressed for centuries is suddenly unleashed. What followed was no longer a revolution in the political sense. It was ethnic revenge violence. Arabs and South Asians were hunted everywhere. Homes were burned. Shops were looted. Many people were dragged into the streets and killed on the spot, without trial, without accusation. Entire families were murdered simply because they bore Arab surnames. Women were raped in broad daylight. Some people sought refuge in mosques, believing them to be safe, and never came out again. The numbers remain disputed to this day. But most independent researchers agree that at least 5,000 people were killed, and the real figure may reach 20,000 or more. In a small archipelago like Zanzibar, this was a humanitarian catastrophe. The majority of the victims were civilians. Unarmed. Defenseless. No courts. No trials. Only crowds and hatred accumulated over generations. After the violence subsided, a new government was established. And the first thing it did was not to investigate. John Okello, the man who ignited the fire, was quickly pushed aside and then expelled. His existence became awkward for a state seeking international legitimacy. The massacres were forbidden to be mentioned. In textbooks, in the media, in official discourse, everything was condensed into a single phrase: the Righteous Liberation Revolution. No memorials. No independent investigation commissions. No official apologies. Only silence. A few months later, Zanzibar merged with Tanganyika, forming what is now Tanzania. And the story of those who died gradually vanished from collective memory. The Zanzibar Revolution left history with a bitter lesson. Prolonged oppression can give birth to horrific violence. Liberation, if left unchecked, can turn into massacre. And history is written not only by the victors, but also by what they choose not to mention. Revisiting these stories is not meant to reignite hatred. It is to understand that justice delayed too long may return in its most brutal form. And if we forget chapters like Zanzibar 1964, then that tragedy can absolutely happen again, somewhere else, to other people.